questions, okay? It's better that way.
Okay,
Sure.
he says you signed off on a plan in which specifically rejected King and Baratania as alignments.
You know, if you read my my op-ed that was published in the Star Advertiser, you're going to see that I said we will focus on seeing whether Baratania and King Street can be used. When you read what's in this expensive document, this is only the first volume, there are 3 volumes. I thought it cost $10 million to do this, but my engineer friends tell me that ever since they started in 2000 I think it was, tried $25 million, you'll be more close, okay? Now, if you read his release and the section that he came out with, what are you talking about? You're talking about impact basically on parking. You know, if you drive along Baratania and King Street, you find 3 parking spaces here. Down the road, you find maybe a couple more, etc., etc. Okay. Now, you can do different things. You can be flexible. You can basically, the mayor can, you know, abolish or not permit parking up to say 10 o'clock. That's when the buses are at their heaviest, and the shops don't open until about then anyway. Then you can, you know, allow parking. The thing about the bus is that it's flexible; it can go around things, you know, and so these guys are searching for something, and you know, that's what he's latching on to. Shows how inflexible they are and how inflexible he is. He should be looking for, I think, alternate solutions, develop ideas on his own, especially when we paid so much for this. Anything else?
Were you aware that those routes and others were sort of delisted when you signed it and when the FTA approved it? He was trying to make a statement that basically says, aha, he didn't even know what he was signing. He signed it off and they're rejecting that very alignment.
Well, I tell you what, I knew more about it than he did about the rail system, which he left to guys like Hamayasu and all that to do. Did I know about that specific provision? I think we may have discussed it, and the question was, oh, well, why was it rejected? When you read it, it says impact on parking, the small businesses on the side. It says, oh, it's a little too far from the downtown corridor. Well, you know, no system is perfect. Now, you guys should ask Carlisle this. What do you think this is going to do to traffic when you build it? It's going to close this street here and Bishop Street. How about that for an impact on business? You know, what about this here? This is Chinatown. What do you think it's going to do to the business alongside you? So, you know, this is kind of, as far as I'm concerned, it shows how he thinks, and we think differently.
When you say what it's going to do to traffic, you mean when it's under construction?
Right. You know, you're talking about a 20, maybe a 15, 10-year program. When you look at, you know, when you look at what it looks like in Waipahu, the same thing will happen, I think.
What is that arch rendering of? Is that near Baratania Street?
This one here?
Yeah. Where is that?
No, this is the Dillingham building.
Bishop okay.
This is Bishop, and this is you know, Nimitz, Alamona really by then.
So Aloha Tower would be on the side.
You talk about disruption. This thing is going to go down right into EV Central. So you got to make choices. You know, when you do, you know, set up these kind of systems, and making choices is not always easy.
Governor, I remember back in 2002, 2003 when we first had this discussion about BRT. You know, I do recall you had raised concerns. Do you recall what those concerns were and why you're thinking maybe we should relook BRT now?
I don't recall specifically what the concerns were, Gordon, at that particular time. I do recall that I accepted the program, you know, the EIS. No, I don't recall.
He did say nothing has changed in the past 10 years, except that traffic has gotten worse. It's almost like on that.
Who said it?
Carlisle in his press conference. Nothing has changed in the past 10 years. So we asked him, well, okay, then if that was good enough 10 years ago, you know, why not? Now, what do you want to say to his comment of he's saying nothing's changed in the past 10 years except traffic's gotten worse?
Well, you know, maybe you can ask him why was rail rejected twice in over the last 20 years. You go through this, there are sections here that talk about how prohibitively expensive it would be to build an elevated rail or even a at-grade rail through the downtown area. And you make choices. To me, the choice is this. On the one hand, you got the $5.27 billion, maybe $7 billion rail system. On the other hand, you have a bus rapid transit that may cost $1 billion, maybe a little bit more. They both carry about the same ridership, although the study indicates that bus rapid transit would carry a little higher ridership. Rail is inflexible. It's going to go right through, block the views downtown. You can move buses, if need be. For me, that's no choice. I go with the less expensive one, and that's where I'm going.
But so you're saying, just to clarify, that the same EIS that you're holding, that he's getting on you about 2 alignments,
yeah, specifically
points out rail as being prohibitively expensive.
Right. He talks about, first, a subway as being very expensive. He talks about the, I think it's at-grade rail as being very, very expensive, because when you come downtown, you don't know what's under the ground, okay? And that's why it came out with the conclusion that bus rapid transit was the better choice. So that's what this document represents, Now, this is 2003, you got a new mayor in 2004, and he tosses this in the wastebasket and comes up with his pet steel on steel, which costs 5 times more.
Mayor Carlisle also made the point that, he thinks you forgot what you approved and what was rejected. Do you think he's got a pretty good grasp on the details of this rail project?
Well, maybe he's starting to learn. He certainly didn't have it, before. His attitude was, leave it to the professionals. He pretty much put the rail project on autopilot, while he was taking trips all over the place. He didn't know, for example, that the federal government does not cover cost overruns. He didn't know that. So he didn't even know when Toro Hamayasu approved the first $15 million change order. And by the way, since then there have been 93 change orders. This is stuff that you guys should be looking into. You look at the contracts. The contracts are very favorable to the contractors. When they talk about the bids coming in low, I talk to contractors. They say, yeah, the bids came in low because the city guaranteed payment of increase in material costs. Usually, those factors are put into the contract, so the contractor would say, well, maybe I've got to put in a 15 or 10%, a fudge factor for material costs. The city is guaranteed material costs.
So it's a cost-plus contract?
Well, it's almost like that, But you look at the statements of Hamayasu. Well, don't worry about that. Now, the Jacobson report, criticizes the city for allowing contractors to buy equipment and material that they won't be using until 2-3 years from now. That's in the report. Okay. Why are they doing this? They're doing this because they want to spend as much as possible, take the project to a point where they can say to the people, it's too costly to cancel. That's what they're doing, And I tell you, if I'm elected mayor, these guys are not going to get reimbursed for those kind of costs, because there's no reason that they should be buying equipment and material, down the road when they won't be using it for 2 or 3 years.
The mayor is trying to make it BRT versus rail, but can you talk a little bit more about some of the other things you might have in your plan besides BRT?
You mean for transportation?
Mm-hmm, for your plan, yeah.
Well, as I've said publicly many times, for example, you take the traffic synchronization system, we're about 15, 20 years behind. I hope to upgrade that. Comparatively speaking, the costs to upgrade are not great when you compare it to the other options. You're looking at things like flexible work hours, the UH changing its, the starting time. All those things have to be negotiated, of course, because a lot of this stuff is state. New ideas, for example, I think it's Minnesota or Wisconsin have come up with the idea of they call it bus on the shoulders during peak hours. We got to look at those kind of things. That doesn't mean we're going to accept it, but we need to have an open mind and look at these different kinds of options. Carlisle hasn't done that. He doesn't even have a plan B. You ask him, hey, what's going to happen if the federal money doesn't come in? Or what if it only comes in partially? What's your plan B? He doesn't have a plan B. His plan A is then he's going to get the money. Read what's happening in California. California, they propose this $34 billion high-speed rail system. They're supposed to get only $3.5 billion. This is Obama's pet project. He's not going to get it because the Republicans are not going to give it to him. So why should they give us, with only 950,000 people, $1.5 billion? These are the kind of things that really we find troubling.
We asked him to speak about, buses aren't just going to go away under rail. What's your bus plan? He referred us to his Sunday editorial and declined to recite any specifics. Do you feel that he's abandoning buses under his plan? I mean, what do you feel about the point that when you ask him about anything besides rail, there's not much? We even found it very difficult to have some substance behind it.
Well, since he doesn't say anything because he doesn't have substance, to me that's pretty simple, Why do you guys let him get away with that? Come on, answer the question. He doesn't answer the question. He just walks away. That's it for today, guys, What do you let him get away?
Well, we almost tackled him.
We almost stopped short
Believe
of
me,
physical
we tried.
today.
But we can show the video of him walking away. That would work.
So,
look, you folks know me. I've been in office for a long, long time. I don't think I've ever walked away from a question that you asked me. If I didn't have the answer, I'll tell you, So.
On that point, I do have a question, because you brought up the whole thing about changing hours, because you did try that. My memory serves me right. Didn't you try to switch the hours of the UH workers or
State workers?
I was lieutenant governor, and I asked Governor Wahe to get for his permission for me to do a pilot project, and it didn't include the UH, it didn't include the DOE, just include the state workers downtown. And if you go back and look at the analysis, it was pretty effective in terms of reducing traffic congestion or taking cars off the road. Yeah.
But it was only temporary.
Yes, only temporary. See, I wasn't governor. If I was governor, then maybe I would make it permanent.
so just so we're straight on the BRT point.
Yeah.
You're for BRT that's on grade, all right? Not elevated.
Yeah, I don't want anything elevated downtown. That's my basic premise, Now, by the airport viaduct where it comes down, right around Middle Street, the state has a plan, actually, I think, for a flyover. And, when I was governor, I think I may have approved that plan, I can't remember. What I've said is that when it comes to things like that, I'll go to the state, I'll go to the governor and say, let's have the city and state work together on this. Because I know the state wants to do it. And I guess the carrot on my part as mayor would be to say to the governor, we will, match the funds, provided I can use the real money. That's the kind of cooperation that I think we need to try and free up some of these areas.
And what you're saying then is, once you get into town, BRT at grade is not going to disrupt traffic, but just parking.
Well, it may take some lanes, during the peak hours, but you gotta make choices. You want a 50, 60, foot high rail system running across the waterfront and disrupting ancient burial sites and all of that, or you look at running the bus rapid transit down maybe King Street or Britannia Street, and look into what the issue is. The issue is parking for the small businesses, and so can you deal with that? Well, we're going to take a look at it.
What about rail versus BRT on condemnation? Because I know there's like $214 million in set aside for land condemnation for the rail. Do you see having to condemn land for the BRT?